financial center, education center, production center of today's China. It's all on the coastline. So the Navy's mission is to make sure that nobody touched this, so I can continue to grow. To go out, you have a big stone right there. You can go other places, but there is a stopper, a stone blocking your way, and that's Taiwan.
Now, Taiwan depends on the outcome of elections that could change its executive power and stock market risks that can endanger its economy. Beijing, nevertheless, has understood that whatever the mood on the island, especially when it is favorable to political reconciliation, the strategy must never change. Imperturbable, the communist regime continues. On one hand, to offer Taiwan favorable business privileges on the mainland. On the other hand, it regularly reiterates its military threats. If the Taiwanese are too insistent about their desire for independence, they're going to have to fight for it. Whatever Taiwan's political tendencies, Beijing's position doesn't change one iota. A freeway in the middle of the island of Taiwan. In a few minutes, it has been transformed into a landing strip. The population watches this military exercise. They're used to it. French Mirage 2000 and American F-16 jets land and take off with an enormous roar. Faced with the uncertainty of American support, Taiwan organizes its own defense. Everyone knows that the airports will be the first target. Strategists on both sides of the strait affirm that the war will first begin with an air battle.
I think that experts the world over know that it's very difficult to succeed with an invasion. We still remember Normandy. In a strait like ours, it's what's in the air that will make the difference. And we've always tried to keep a strategic advantage over China, our air superiority. But with the Chinese missiles, this equilibrium has been put into question. They can destroy our airports. And if they are destroyed, we lose our only advantage over China, our air superiority.
Taiwan's military power is concentrated in its air force, but also in special ground forces. They are training to face the Chinese People's Liberation Army. In the event of a conflict, they expect elite Chinese troops to parachute onto the island to attack strategic targets.
Every Taiwanese people here knows that when the war comes, Taiwan is going to take the first bullet. We are going to take the first bullet, and probably we're going to take the bullets continuing for about 2 weeks until a month, until that the United States coming. And there's no way that U.S. will come here to fight a difficult fight. If they really want to get involved, it's better for them that to wait when the Taiwanese people, we are wearing down the Chinese elite troops, and give them the huge number of the sacrifice. And then the U.S. can come in and clean out the battlefield and win an easy fight. Everybody in Taiwan knows that.
In Washington, the scenario of the next confrontation is a constant preoccupation. They know that Chinese military power has increased significantly, but how the Pentagon will react in case of a new Taiwan crisis remains a mystery.
It's certainly not automatic, the support for Taiwan. It never has been. The United States has always maintained a policy of so-called strategic ambiguity, in which neither Beijing nor Taiwan can know clearly what the U.S. response might be under any given set of circumstances.
I think that 10 years later, from 1996, the missile crisis in the Taiwan Strait, to 2007, we would approach the Taiwan issue with a little bit more caution. No, we would approach the Taiwan issue with a lot more caution. What this means, I think, is that we would be probably resupplying Taiwan by air. We probably would put a active duty military contingent on Taiwan rather than risk putting our ships in harm's way.
Coming away from this crisis, the U.S. has concluded that I think there's been problems in what they've concluded. The U.S. has concluded that the Chinese were somewhat intimidated by the U.S. deployments, and that in fact they now know the U.S. is very determined to use force if necessary to ensure peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. In fact, however, I don't think the Chinese were all that intimidated by the deployment of the carriers. What they were is it strengthened their resolve to acquire capabilities so that they won't be intimidated in the future.
Since the 1996 confrontation between China and the United States around the Taiwan issue, I think China's military modernization speed up. And people saw some achievements, right? Now China owns J-10. That's the typical third generation fighter. And that made China is the third country that can independently produce the third generation firefighter. I think that's a strong signal to the U.S. side, what achievement on military modernization on PLA side.
If China's own terminal objective is trying to so-called unify Taiwan by using force to take over, I think their military capability is good enough. But I don't see that, because they're increasing their military budget over the last decade, almost every year, 2-digit, and their budget is not transparent. Some observers calculated, they said, well, in fact, the real number could be triple or double the current budget that they made it public. So why they are doing it? They even, for instance now, they even try to show off they have the capability to destroy the satellite circling around in space. Why they did it? Because they want to show to the rest of the world that we are capable of one day becoming a superpower, maybe overtaking the United States.
Frankly speaking, the status quo balance of power is still strongly in favor of the United States. But the situation of balance of power is unchanged. And I think time is on China's side.
Since the 1996 crisis, the United States and China have often had occasion to test each other's resolve. Small conflicts, sometimes public, sometimes secret, that can be understood today as a pattern of confrontations between the two powers. On May 7th, 1999, in the midst of the Kosovo War, NATO bombed the Chinese embassy in Belgrade. 3 Chinese people were killed. NATO claimed it was a military error. CIA had apparently furnished the wrong maps. In answer to this provocation, the Chinese organized mass demonstrations in front of American embassies. Less than 2 years later, China had its revenge. The 1st of April 2001, an EP-3 took off from its base in Japan. It's a spy plane that flies regular electronic surveillance missions along the Chinese coast. After 6 hours of flight, while still in international airspace, the American airplane was intercepted by 3 Chinese jets. This had been going on for some months. The Chinese planes came within a few meters of the American plane, a little game that the pilots were used to. One of the Chinese pilots was Wang Wei, and the crew of the EP-3 knew him well.
He had already shown through his past interceptions of U.S. aircraft that he was willing to take some very serious risks in coming very, very close to U.S. aircraft.
They knew him well. Smart Alec. Hot dog, we call him. He's in the thing and screw you, and Sam, he comes up like this. Well, he comes a little bit too close. And the Chinese, again, the propaganda apparatus turns on, and they say, our plane deliberately turned, hit his plane, and it crashed. Your fault. And we said to China, that defies the laws of physics.
The U.S. government had already expressed its concern over this to the Chinese government. I think in this instance, he miscalculated, and he allowed his aircraft to get too close, and it struck the U.S. aircraft, and it damaged his aircraft in a way that forced him to crash.
The Chinese jet plunged into the sea. Its pilot was declared missing. The EP-3 was seriously damaged. It was forced to make an emergency landing, but the closest airstrip was a Chinese military airbase. The airplane succeeded in landing there, but it was now in Hainan, and the crew was immediately taken prisoner.
Our air crew is immune to PRC jurisdiction.
For the next 10 days, China and the US would perform a diplomatic ballet, each accusing the other of responsibility for the accident. Beijing refused to liberate the crew. This bought time for their military experts to inspect and dismantle the American airplane, which was jam-packed with secret defense equipment.
Oh, they got the equipment from the plane, and they studied it and took all these things from it. Yeah, they got something. But I mean, it's no big deal.
Finally, 10 days later, a letter from the US ambassador apologized for the death of the Chinese pilot, and the crew was freed. What was left of the EP-3 was loaded onto a huge Antonov transport plane. Direction, the United States. The People's Liberation Army did the same thing after each small battle. They analyzed all American techniques and strategies. It was almost an obsession with Beijing. Chinese military development was entirely oriented towards a confrontation with the US. In 1996, China understood that aircraft carriers were the main threat, so they tried to develop arms to counter them.
There are several things that the Chinese have done over the last several years that play to this capability. One of them is they have developed a larger number